school and what is the expected behavior by the students. And that is a critical aspect. When you're talking about the cafeteria, in the playground, in the hallway, where are you walking, right? What side of the hallway are you walking? Are your feet, are your hands to the side?
Yes.
Those are important spaces. If you are going to be in the playground, what are the expected behaviors in the playground? The behavior repertoire for someone's hallway behaviors will look differently than playground, which is fine, but they have to make sure they adhere to your specific behavior expectation. If you're in the cafeteria, what does that look like in the cafeteria? So again, whatever acronym that you have, that whatever vernacular that you're using, ensuring that that is going to be aligned. Your operation define the behavior and align to what the student's supposed to do. And that needs to be taught daily, consistently, until skill acquisition is mastered, and then until you can start generalizing, and then you can just take data from maintenance. But that is a huge, and I think for that, in my experience, working with in my leadership career, I had an opportunity to work as a traveling supervisor of special education, where you're in schools, supporting schools, because you had programs in schools for the first couple of years. And you could see the certain schools that were flourishing, doing well, who were adhering to these teaching matrix, and then some schools who may not. So that is, again, that is so critical when you are working in a building, particularly an alternative school, that you have to have these set of contingencies in place, and they need to be taught as well.
I 100% agree, but we have to look at what teaching actually means, man. And here's what a lot of people think that it means too often. They think that the first day of school, we go out and we bring people by in the hallway or by the cafeteria and the playground, all these areas. They say, here are the expectations, here are the rules, and here's what it looks like. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's what you're not supposed to do, right? They think that is, they were taught. That is not the teaching part of it, right? It's the initial part of it, right? The teaching comes from the reinforcing and the correcting as it relates to those expectations, which is why part of school-wide behavior management system and a class-wide behavior management system has to have processes for reinforcing and correcting behavior. Has to have both, right?
Yes.
And PBIS has been notoriously weak for correcting behavior, although it's in the early research. I think it ended up getting like diluted when it was being taught, in the interest of making sure that we really want to create a reinforcing environment, but behavior is still occurring, right?
Yes.
Which means we have to correct it, and teachers usually don't have the tools in their toolbox to correct behavior at different levels. New behavior should be corrected differently than its repetitive, milder behavior than it is for higher level behavior, right? So I know that there's these matrices that talks about classroom managed behavior, and but they don't have the tools to do it. They have reprimand, they have timeout in the classroom, they have timeout out of the classroom, right? They have call home. They need to have something that they can give small doses regularly, like every time. So instead of like, it could be like a demerit or something like that. Every time you call out, you get a you get a demerit, and that demerit equals 5 seconds off your time on your favorite playground thing. We're not taking away recess, but you got to use your 5, you got to race 5 seconds over there. And not only is it teaching that student, right, and without shooting the teacher in the foot, because if they give away their whole thing and the student's still doing it, but it's also teaching everybody around that student. The same way when you're driving, you get pulled over, get a ticket, other people see that, right, and they slow their behavior down. But that only works when you have an environment that's rich with positive reinforcement, which is the fundamental premise of PBIS. If you're correcting misbehavior and you don't have that 4-to-1 ratio, those 4s aren't meaningful, that correction becomes very aversive, and it will backfire on everybody.
100%. And here's the thing: when you're going over these teaching the matrix, or going over that, you should be using differential reinforcement, should be put in place, right? You're running a DRA procedure. For example, let's say you have disruption in your class because certain students are calling out rather than raising their hand. So you're going to teach raising hand. You'll practice raising hand, and then when you ask a question as an instructor, as a teacher, And the students who raise their hand, you are highly reinforcing the individuals who raise their hand. Now, again, specifically depending on the certain students, the one who calls out, you can either ignore, or to your point, you gave an example what you can do for certain students who may not, but you want to heavily reinforce the ones who raise their hand, whether that could be verbal praise, social contact with a high five, or it can be some type of, depending on the learner, an edible, something you would do to highly reinforce. And for that, like those, when we say teaching, that's what we're looking for. Is taking and allotting time in your day to teach specific skills with your students throughout the day, not just to your point, some kind of rule governed behavior where you're saying, this is our rules and this is how you're going to follow it. And that's really it. Because what happens, to your point, is that, yes, that's, you know, the students are not really even contacting reinforcement. And also too, like to your point, as you said earlier, that you alluded to in regards to, you know, learning occurs through the consequences. So.